Alright guys, so we are headed into the eye of the storm. For over 3 years, we knew the US economy was in deep trouble. Inflation isn't coming down. Interest rates are still at crazy high levels. Biden tried to hide the rod through extreme deficit spending. In 2024, he borrowed over $1.8 trillion dollars, or 6.4% of total US GDP to keep the party going. Now that's a lot of money flooding into the economy. It distorted consumption, it distorted asset prices, it caused it to rise, and really gave everyone a false sense of reality. And the time bomb is already exploding under the Trump White House. Now, GDP growth for 2024 came in at only 2.8%. This is perhaps the biggest warning sign that the entire system is broken. For every dollar of GDP growth, you are spending over $2. It's not sustainable. It shows enormous wastage and an economic engine that is extremely inefficient. So there were already underlying problems, and now Trump has decided to detonate the time bomb with his global tariff war.
But so we're going April 2nd, but very importantly, tomorrow tariffs 25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico, and that'll start. So they're going to have a tariff. So what they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States, in which case they have no tariffs.
You could literally see the stock market collapsing in real time as Trump made the announcement. And as we mentioned time and time again, Trump is serious about punishing the world. He sees it as the only way to reshore industries back to the United States. Now, tariffs is a beggar thy neighbor strategy. You are basically destroying the economies of other countries to enrich your own. And now it's official. Trump is imposing a 25% duty across the board on Canadian and Mexican imports. He's also raising the additional tariff on China from 10 to 20%. In total, this would affect $1.5 trillion in total US imports annually. This is a big shock to the global economy. Supply chains are going to get wrecked, and many exporters around the world could be put out of business. By raising tariffs, you are weaponizing your entire consumer market. Countries like Mexico have to deindustrialize. They have to shift production to the United States to escape the import tax. However, Trump forgot one simple fact: countries around the world will retaliate. The unipolar moment is over, and the shift to a multipolar future can't be stopped, not even by Trump. Now, in response to the tariffs, China and Canada, they have started their trade retaliation. And here's Canada's hit back: a 25% tariff on $20 billion dollars worth of goods from US exporters. And in 3 weeks, Canada will be imposing more tariffs on an additional $125 billion dollars of US products. If Trump still doesn't withdraw his trade war, things can get truly nasty. Now, Canada can ramp up their tariffs to target every single US good coming into the country, and that would affect $350 billion dollars worth of US exports, which is the single biggest market for US companies. Now, needless to say, Trump is playing with fire. When you tariff imports, you are raising inflation for your own people. US consumers are already in crisis mode, and most of their spending is already being done on credit cards. And because the world is retaliating, a ton of US exports could grind to a halt as well. American industries are high cost producers. Canada's 25% retaliation tariffs are enough to wipe out profit margins, especially if US exporters are forced to eat the tax. Now, let's not forget boycotts on US goods are already happening. Thanks to the retaliation, we could see an extreme contraction in US exports to Canada, and we are now in the danger zone. Mining exports could fall by almost 100%. Motor vehicle exports could collapse by 55%. Manufacturing and electronic equipment sales could crash by at least 67%. This is a total wipeout of the US economy. It's mutually assured economic destruction. But Trump doesn't care. He wants to speedrun America's industrial revival. He's fine breaking a ton of economies in the process to reach the promised land. But there's a good chance he won't reach his end goal. The US economy is already showing signs of total collapse. In order to paper over this crisis, the normal US government response is to borrow a ton of money, and spend it like drunken sailors to run a higher fiscal deficit to run the economy hot. But that tactic is out because countries are not buying US bonds like before. They are not interested in funding their own containment. According to the Atlanta Fed, US GDP estimates have collapsed even further. Now, a few days ago, we were at minus 1.5%, but the drop just got worse, crashing down to minus 2.8%. It shouldn't come as a surprise. Trump has no room to raise the deficits. In fact, through Doge, he is cutting federal jobs like no tomorrow. He can't afford for bond yields to spike higher, or it would squeeze consumers even further. So for the US, it's now between a controlled implosion or chaotic collapse. Either outcome is bad for people, jobs will be lost, and if you're in the markets, you can already see the devastation across the board. Almost everything is in the red. Within a matter of hours, the S&P lost over $1.5 trillion in market cap. And that was just a few days ago. It's probably over $4 trillion in losses today. Investors and the world, they are all sick of the US economy. If Trump continues to clobber the world with tariffs, how is this good for company earnings? US consumers will face higher prices, so domestic spending itself would collapse. Because countries like Mexico and Canada, they are so dependent on US trade, their economies would also fall. Their odds of entering a recession is extremely high. The US is now in a trade war with their biggest trading partners, and in this scenario, where everyone retaliates with equal tariffs, Canada and Mexico loses the most. Canada alone could suffer a GDP collapse of 3%. Mexico's economy could also crash by 3.1. Even if Mexico and Canada chooses to turn the other cheek, their economies would fall by at least 1% as well. That alone might be enough to push them into recession. And when an economy contracts, the biggest damage done is to job growth. In other words, massive unemployment is coming. And how is that good for Trump's economy? You will have a bunch of angry people who have no money to spend. And I guarantee you, the last thing they want to do is go out there and spend money on US goods. They will either buy local, they'll buy from other economies, or simply cut away their spending completely. And that's why Trump has made a grave miscalculation. He really thinks the world will roll over like a dummy, and the gravest mistake of all is underestimating China.
Well, let me be very frank, okay? I strongly believe this time around, tariff is no longer a big issue. I would even, if you give me an order of 3 top issues in China or challenges in China, I don't even put top 3, even among the top 3, the tariff from President Trump. In fact, the whole economy was preparing for 40% or even 60% of tariff hike from President Trump. Now he's only imposing 10%. Of course, there are indirect tariff upon Chinese products from Mexico, from Canada, from Europe. But overall, it's still smaller than people anticipated. It's smaller than the year of 2018. So this time around, the Chinese economy is fully prepared. I do not think the tariff is a big issue.
Even a former PBOC advisor doesn't think that tariffs are concerned to China anymore. It's more irritating than anything else. China's economy is extremely resilient. It's on an economic war footing. They have the room to launch massive stimulus, their bond yields are dirt cheap compared to the United States, plus inflation is very low in China. And that's why the Chinese have no fear of striking back. Beijing has officially retaliated, and that is tearing apart the US market. A 15% tariff on farm imports from US exporters, and this includes chicken, wheat, corn, and cotton. Soybeans, beef, fruits, and dairy are also subjected to a 10% tariff from China. This is a brutal punishment to US farmers. Margins are extremely tight there. China can also source their food imports from BRICS members like Russia, like Brazil. So Beijing is not going to starve. This import hit, however, will clobber the breadbasket of the United States. China also has the capacity to grow their own food, and their cost of production is very much lower. Now, Trump has sprung the trap and he won't be pleased with the results. China has clobbered at least 10 categories of US food imports. In total, this accounts for $22 billion worth of US food imports. Remember that China is a command economy. The tariffs aren't just a simple 25% tax or 15% tax on US farm products. They are more like an imperial order from China's government. Beijing wants to punish the US and cut away all these exports completely. We have to read between the lines here. In the official statement, China has said they won't be bullied by the Trump tariffs, and they are starting to back it up with trade punishments. Now, China is facing US tariffs like no other country is. The US is trying to turn the entire North America against Chinese exports.
I do think one very interesting proposal that the Mexican government has made is perhaps matching the U.S. On our China tariffs. I think it would be a nice gesture if the Canadians did it also. So in a way, we could have fortress North America from the flood of Chinese imports that's coming out of the most unbalanced economy in the history of modern times.
So we can expect the Chinese economy to rally behind Beijing. This is now an existential threat. Besant and Trump want to weaponize the entire Western Hemisphere against China's trade. So they have to strike back. If Beijing doesn't launch counter punishments, they could see the entire trade surplus evaporate away. Now, as we speak, the US markets are collapsing to new lows in 2025. Whatever gains we saw since Trump took office are gone. And if you went all into US stocks, you are probably seeing red everywhere. And here's why. The US tariffs on China are hitting over $520 billion of Chinese goods. However, Beijing's 2 rounds of tariffs have hit less than $40 billion of US exports. So China has a lot of room left to play. Last year, China imported $160 billion worth of US goods and services, and a lot of these are easily replaceable with domestic Chinese production. So there is a qualitative difference between China's punishments and Trump's trade war. When the US tariffs China, prices go up for US consumers. US supply chains are still too fractured. China, on the other hand, can import alternatives from the world, or they simply make stuff back home. They will eat their own home cooked food instead of stuff made in the United States. And that's why Trump's trade war is senseless. He's attacking his neighbors while unleashing the Chinese dragon and is pushing the US economy off a cliff. Even investors are retaliating. They are dumping US stocks. The S&P has officially erased all of their post-election gains. It's down by over $3 trillion, and the biggest losers are of course the overpriced Magnificent Seven. Now, how far this collapse continues really depends on Donald Trump. He's becoming a one-man government at this point, and if he U-turns the tariffs, then yes, stocks might recover. But if he doesn't, he will just invite even more retaliation. Canada, for example, is moving to take extreme measures. Boycotts are getting worse. It's now a strategy to confront Trump's trade war. Nova Scotia is going to remove all US-made alcohol from their store shelves. In addition, they will immediately block US companies from bidding on provincial contracts and to cancel existing deals. In other words, the world's going to starve the US out. And that's how destructive this trade war is becoming. No one wins, and the US could ultimately hurt the most. And I have to repeat this one more time. The US economy is not exceptional, and it is not immune to the effects of global retaliation. So hang tight because the chaos isn't over yet. But let me know what you think. How much further will US stocks collapse? And will Trump back off his tariff war, or will he keep ramping up the pain? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe. Be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times.